In this video, we're going to talk about some things and some tips to help you get sharper photos. Now, I know there's a lot of information out there when it comes to using tripods and mirror lockup and, good hand holding technique and all that stuff. And that's great. But what I'm going to cover in this video are some things that are built right into your cameras and lenses that are made to help you get sharper photos. And just from my experience and being out there, I find a lot of people either don't know about them or they're not using them to their full extent. You spend a lot of money on these things and just take advantage of the features that are in there. So, and this is mostly going to be for your action wildlife-based photos. So thing number one, stabilization. Your telephoto lenses, a lot of them have an image stabilization or vibration reduction, or Sony calls it optical steady shot. And what that does, it's got little gyroscopes in there that help steady the photo. It's really made mostly for hand holding, okay? Made to steady camera shake. Well, a lot of your cameras have different modes, and you know that manual that came with your lens that you probably threw away. I always throw mine away, but lenses, telephoto lenses, have a lot of little buttons and dials on them, and that manual actually has a lot of good information because every lens is a little bit different. But in general, you might have a lens that's got something, it's easy to turn on, it's just got an on-off switch, but there's modes to it. So you might have a lens that's got a normal or an active mode. If you've got that, normal mode is general hand holding. General, this is walking around, this is what you're going to shoot with. Active is when you're on a platform that's moving, you're on a boat, helicopter, something like that. Then you would turn it on active. But your normal mode is your basic mode for most things. Now, some cameras have mode 1, mode 2, or some lenses even have mode 3 on them, some of the more expensive ones. So that's where it gets a little bit interesting, okay? That's where I would still, again, always suggest you look in your camera manual, but I can give you an idea. So mode 1 is, again, your general hand-holding mode, even if you were on a moving platform, even if you're on a boat or, a helicopter or anything like that. That's your mode 1. Your mode 2, this is where your action photography comes in, because your mode 2 is really geared for panning. And what it's going to do is, if you were to think of panning, whether it's a bicycle, whether it's a motorcycle, or a bird flying across a lake or the shoreline, if you think of panning, you're moving left to right or right to left. So there's a motion there. Well, what you don't want is your vibration reduction, your stabilization, to kick in and turn on and try to stop or steady that motion, because you very purposefully want that panning motion in there, okay? So you don't want that to kick in and actually, in some cases, get you a worse photo. So you can turn it on mode 2. What it's gonna do is it's basically gonna shut off the stabilization for your panning motion, okay? Now, some of your lenses might have mode 3. When you research mode 3, it's essentially erratic movement. So if you've got a bird just flying all over or whatever it happens to be, and it's just, that's your throw the white flag up, I have no idea where this thing's going, I have no idea what it's doing, help me stabilize this lens as best as possible. That would be your mode 3, all right? Next thing we got here, so thing number 2. Thing number 2 is for me, probably the most revolutionary out of all of them. And I'd heard about auto ISO for years. And it was something I didn't use until several years ago. And it's just, again, I knew about it, and I bet you a lot of you have heard about it. If you're not using it, I'm telling you, when it comes to your action photography, it is the single biggest thing that you can do to change that and get more keepers and sharper photos. So essentially, think of this. So we're on aperture priority, all right? We're on aperture priority, the camera is going to automatically pick a shutter speed. Well, as we're photographing things, we can't necessarily keep an eye on that shutter speed, and that shutter speed may dip below what we need it to be to freeze the action and get that sharp photo. Same thing in manual mode. We can be in manual mode and we can set our shutter speed to what we want, but if I've got, a bird over here in the dark and then it flies over the sky, my exposure is going to be crazy because I can't keep up with that. I can't change that fast enough in my camera to make that work. So that's where auto ISO comes in. If you're in aperture priority, when you turn auto ISO on, you can set a base shutter speed. Whatever you need it to be, you set a shutter speed, and you're basically saying, I've set an aperture, auto ISO is on, don't let my shutter speed fall below whatever number you've set it to. Okay, and it'll change the ISO to keep it at least there. It may go higher, but it won't let it fall below that. And then you can even set a base limit to your ISO base, and then you can set a top limit to the ISO as well. If you're in manual mode, then you plug in your aperture, you plug in your shutter speed, auto ISO will then float to keep you at those settings. Again, you can plug in a base and a high number in there as well, but it floats to keep you at those settings. I am telling you, if you change one thing, if you've never used auto ISO before, finish this video, go get your camera manual, figure out how to turn it on in your camera, and start using it for your action photography, because it will change it and you will get better and sharper photos. All right, thing number three. Thing number three are, this is probably the one a lot of people don't know about. A lot of your telephoto lenses, they're not even telephoto, a lot of your even more mid-zoom range lenses as well, have these little buttons on the side of the lenses. They are, the terms change, they're called focus preset, focus function buttons. They're little circular buttons. And then some more expensive lenses have even a little ring on some of the end of the lenses that you can move. So let me tell you where those come in handy. Those come in that you have your hand placed on your lens, and as you're shooting, you can change some very important settings on the fly. All right, and the settings are going to change based on the camera that you have and based on the lens and the functions that your camera offers. But I know a photographer that shoots mirrorless, and what he does is he sets one of those buttons to zoom in, to magnify on the back of the camera. He uses that as a spotting scope so that when he can zoom in on the wildlife that he can't see with his naked eye or through the lens, he can zoom in on the wildlife, see what's happening, and be better readied for what's going to happen. Okay, where he might just be, at the whim of the wildlife that he can't see and then have to change very, very quickly. He can actually get in there and really find out what's going on and be ready and get a better, sharper photo. There's other things you can do. You can change focus modes. Let's say you've got a bird that's perched, it's going to take the flight, or vice versa. You can change your focus areas, your focus modes, so that you can switch that stuff right in the middle of shooting. And again, all these little things help you get a sharper photo. And then some lenses have a little ring. It's usually your more expensive lenses, but they've got a little thing on the end of the lens. This is pretty amazing. So I'm going to use a baseball example, and then I'll go to a wildlife example. What you can do is you can move that ring and you can pre-focus. So let's say we're shooting a baseball game and we know action always happens at second base. All right. What you do is you pre-focus and you set essentially a preset to second base. Then you go about, maybe you're shooting the pitcher, shooting whatever. You go about, your focus changing, doing whatever. And all of a sudden the action's about to happen. You swing over, you hit that focus preset, second base is automatically, instantly in focus. You don't have to worry about fitzing and fuddling around with it. You don't have to worry about the camera missing focus, maybe catching the outfielder or an infielder or anything like that. It instantly focuses where you set that preset to. Same thing with wildlife. Let's use the bird example. We could have a bird on a perch, we could have some birds in flight, and they keep going to a certain place to perch. Well, you can set that as a preset. So now when you're capturing everything in the air, capturing everything in flight, all you got to do when they hit that perch is just swing over. Maybe something changes, you swing over, hit your little focus preset recall, and you're instantly in focus on that area. These are all little things, folks, that I know some of them might even be reviewed, might think of it as almost a little bit of a public service announcement, where I hope, if you heard of it, great. Start to dig into your camera manual, figure out how to use it. If you haven't heard of it, even better, start to dig in, figure out how to use these things. You paid a lot of money for these cameras and these lenses, and they have so much technology that's built in them to help you get a sharper photo, so make sure you're taking advantage of it. And if you like these things, I happen to have a course that covers this stuff and more about getting sharp and in focus photos, so you can always check the description, find out more.